Hello there, my friends. Thank you for joining me today as we sit down to chat about something close to my heart. The surprising journey of traveling alone in our 80s. Now, I know traveling solo might sound a bit daunting to some of you, especially when you consider all the extra challenges that come with age, our aching joints, our changing energy levels, those unexpected curveballs life has been throwing at us for decades. But let me assure you, there's a world of wonder to be found if we're willing to step beyond our front door and see what's out there. That's exactly why I've decided to share with you the 7 most significant lessons I learned from traveling on my own in my 80s. Because yes, despite my gray hair and slightly slower pace, I took that leap, and I'm here to tell you all about it. I hope what I share today will not just entertain you, but also inspire you to consider taking your own little adventure, no matter how small or big it may be. Before we begin, I'd like to invite you to like this video and subscribe to our channel if you find these reflections meaningful. And if you're already feeling that spark of inspiration, comment to our wisdom years below, so we know you're ready to take on new experiences. Let me start with my first lesson, embracing curiosity. As children, we are so curious about the world. We touch, we feel, we ask questions about absolutely everything. Somewhere along the way, many of us lose that curiosity as we become comfortable with routines, or perhaps a bit fearful of change. When I traveled alone for the first time in my 80s, I found myself tapping back into that childlike wonder. I remember stepping off the plane into a city I'd never visited and pausing to breathe in the unfamiliar scents, to notice the architecture, to listen to the buzz of foreign voices. Sure, there were challenges like navigating unfamiliar streets or carrying my luggage up a steep flight of train station stairs, but that little spark of wonder made any inconvenience feel like part of the adventure. I spent the first few days simply allowing myself to wander about with no strict plan, taking in markets, museums, local parks, and stopping whenever something piqued my interest. That sense of curiosity gave me renewed energy and made me realize just how much more there is to explore even at my age. The second lesson I learned was about testing your own limits. Now, I'm not talking about doing anything reckless. I'm talking about recognizing that we might be more capable than we initially believe. So many of us build walls around ourselves, convinced that certain experiences are only for younger folks. But let me tell you, the moment I realized I could manage new transportation systems, communicate with people in different languages using only a phrasebook or gestures, and find my way back to my little rental room after a day of exploring, I felt stronger than I had in years. The truth is, sometimes it takes being in a new environment, slightly outside our comfort zone, to see our real capabilities. I won't pretend it wasn't tiring. My legs did ache at the end of the day, and I often had to rest longer than I used to. But if I had stayed home, telling myself I was too old for this, I would have never discovered how many places I can still go and how many things I can still do. Testing our limits, dear friends, isn't about recklessness. It's about allowing ourselves to see how far we can stretch while still being mindful of our safety and well-being. Now, let's move on to the third lesson, which has been so important for both my emotional well-being and my lifelong growth: finding comfort in solitude. Many of us in later years are used to having people around, a spouse, children, or a friend who live nearby. But when you travel alone, there are these quiet moments that can feel simultaneously peaceful and unsettling. For me, sitting in a little cafe with a cup of coffee, completely on my own, was initially quite strange. I was used to chatting with family or neighbors, sharing jokes or stories. Yet, with nobody to talk to, I learned to appreciate my own company. I found myself reflecting on the life I've lived, the decisions I've made, the relationships I've nurtured, and the dreams I still hold. In this solitude, I discovered that I have inner resources, resilience, self-awareness, and a sense of independence that flourish when I give them time and space. I came back from my travels feeling more comfortable spending time alone at home, embracing the quieter moments rather than fearing them. The fourth lesson revolves around forging unexpected connections. While traveling by myself, I had the pleasure of striking up conversations with strangers far more often than I ever did when traveling with companions. There's something about seeing an older traveler, especially one who might look a bit out of place, that prompts people to reach out and offer a bit of kindness. Some approached me with a friendly smile to ask if I needed help with directions or if I wanted them to take my photo at a famous landmark. Others struck up conversation because they were genuinely curious about my story, about what brought me there alone at this stage of life. I vividly recall sharing a park bench with a local grandmother who educated me on the region's best foods and cultural traditions, all while I showed photos of my own grandchildren back home. We parted ways, hugging like old friends. These unexpected connections reminded me that the world is not nearly as unkind as we sometimes believe. Even if there's plenty of news that suggests otherwise, on an individual level, people can be so compassionate and open-hearted, especially when we welcome conversation. Let's talk about the fifth lesson, acceptance of limitations. Traveling alone in my younger days was full of endless activity, hopping from one place to another without much thought about rest or recovery. But in my 80s, my body demands more care. I need to pace myself, take breaks, manage my medication schedule, and prioritize comfort whenever possible. Initially, this need for extra rest frustrated me. I used to be able to walk miles without a second thought. Now, I have to plan my day so I can return to my room for a short afternoon rest. But as I slowly came to accept my limitations, I realized that traveling at a relaxed pace allowed me to notice details I might have missed when rushing from site to site. I truly savored each location. I lingered longer in quaint shops, sampled local treats with more mindfulness, and struck up deeper conversations because I wasn't rushing to the next destination. Accepting my changing abilities didn't dampen my trip. It actually enriched it in a different, more deliberate way. The sixth lesson was a bit of a surprise to me, the joy of adaptability. At first, I worried about all the small obstacles that might interrupt my plans. Maybe I'd miss a bus, maybe I'd get lost, maybe I'd have a health concern pop up unexpectedly. And in truth, yes, a few of those things did happen. I remember one trip where the train was canceled, leaving me temporarily stranded in a small town. Instead of letting frustration take over, I decided to wander around that town, discovered an old chapel, chatted with a local artisan who showed me his workshop, and ended up trying a regional meal in a family-run diner. That day turned into one of the most memorable of my entire journey. Similarly, I once forgot my cane in a hotel lobby, and rather than panic, I simply explained the situation to the staff, who were kind enough to express ship it to my next stop. Being adaptable means going with the flow, looking for the silver lining when plans shift. In our 80s, we've seen enough life to know that changes happen whether we like it or not. Embracing adaptability as we travel can turn those hiccups into highlights. Finally, the seventh and perhaps most meaningful lesson is the undeniable power of perspective. Once you're in your 80s, you've likely seen a fair chunk of life: triumphs, losses, heartaches, joys. You carry memories of loved ones no longer with us, and you carry the wisdom gained from countless experiences. When you place yourself in a brand new context, in a foreign land, a different culture, or even just a new part of your own country, you gain a fresh perspective on everything you've lived through. You start to connect the dots in new ways, seeing how your experiences shaped you and maybe noticing how you can still grow. I felt this especially when I found myself in a small coastal town at sunset, watching as families played on the beach. Memories of my own children filled my mind, and I was overwhelmed not with sadness, but with gratitude for the life I've been given. It's like stepping outside yourself and remembering that you are part of a bigger tapestry, one that spans cultures and generations. This perspective can be deeply healing, giving us a sense of gratitude for the past and hope for what remains ahead. So those are my 7 lessons. I hope they resonate with you. Maybe my story will spark a little thrill inside you to consider going on your own mini adventure. It doesn't have to be halfway across the globe. It could be a town nearby that you've never visited, or simply taking a weekend away to visit a friend who lives in a different county. The important part is to allow yourself the freedom to explore, to discover new challenges, to find joy in solitude, and to remind yourself that it's never too late to test your own strength. If you're feeling inspired to plan your next adventure, large or small, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, and comment or wisdom years to let me know you're out there, ready to explore. Before we wrap up, let me quickly recap the 7 lessons I learned traveling alone in my 80s. First, I rediscovered my curiosity. Second, I tested my limits and found new confidence in what I could still do. Third, I learned to appreciate the quiet of solitude. Fourth, I forged unexpected connections that made the world kinder kinder. Fifth, I accepted my limitations and embraced a more relaxed pace. Sixth, I discovered the joy of adaptability, turning small problems into delightful surprises. And seventh, I found that traveling can powerfully shift my perspective on life, love, and everything in between. Remember, even in our later years, life holds so much space for adventure, learning, and awe. Thank you truly for spending this time with me. I hope these reflections inspire you to broaden your horizons in whatever way feels right. Until next time, take good care of yourself, and don't forget to leave a comment or share a memory of a trip that changed your life. Stay curious and stay open to the wonders that await you, no matter your age.